shopping sustainably for over a year now, meaning I have not bought anything that was made using unsustainable practices to contribute to my wardrobe. I have done this for a year now, and I feel like it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, and I think that it would be really cool to show you how I did it. So this is how. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that I'm very passionate about, because I try to live my life based on these particular values when it comes to style and fashion, just because it's something that I have done a lot of research about and something that I care a lot about. That is kind of like a theme in all of my other videos as well, but something I haven't actually explicitly really talked about in a lot of depth on my channel yet, and something that I feel like I do need to talk in depth about a little bit, just because it's something that really matters to me. We're in the year 2020, and I think it's time that we started having way more conversations about what I'm about to talk about, which is how to shop sustainably, and specifically how I, as a 23-year-old student, find ways to shop sustainably. Young people maybe make the excuse that they can't shop sustainably because they're on a budget, or because fast fashion is easier and cheaper and it's a better alternative for them. And I totally agree with all of that, but I think that there's ways that I, as a 23-year-old student, have figured out how to shop sustainably based on my budget, which is not a lot. And I think that it's something that a lot of people should be considering taking up kind of in their lifestyle, and if they shop a lot, I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind. And if you care about the environment, it's a really important thing to keep in mind. So if you are curious about how I shop sustainably, keep watching. So I have a couple of things that I wrote down about how I specifically shop sustainably, because I think that everybody has different ways that they do this. The fashion industry has one of the biggest impacts on the environment that I know of in present day. And I'll cite all of the things that I say. So the first thing I'm going to mention in this video is the idea of thrifting. And this is something that I have talked about a lot on my channel, so I won't talk about it too much. Thrifting, I think, is probably one of the most beneficial ways to help the environment. Thrifting is this really, really cool thing that also, I think, stops the cycle in its tracks by reusing things that we already have. And I think that it's something that I find very affordable as a student. It's something that I find really, really cool, because I love vintage and I love shopping for vintage. I think that it's just, I have fun doing that, so I think that that made it easier for me. If you've never been in a thrift store before, it's very surprising what they have. Buying secondhand, I think, is very important for the environment, and I think it's really an easy thing to do for any young person that is on a budget, that can't afford to stop buying fast fashion. And I want to take this time in this video just to say, if your excuse is that you're on a budget, that's no longer an excuse for not caring about the environment. Just in my opinion, I think that it's, and I don't want to be abrasive when I say that, because I really believe that, yes, everybody's on a budget, not everybody can afford what other people can afford. But I really think that thrifting and buying secondhand is something that pretty much anyone can do. If you have any kind of transit system in your city, if you live in a small town, I'm pretty sure that a lot of places in North American contexts anyway have thrift stores or secondhand stores right down the street from them. And maybe I have a very narrow-minded worldview of that particular issue, just because I live in a place where there's a lot of secondhand stores, and buying secondhand is just so cool, because you find things sometimes that regularly in a first-hand store, is that the right word? If you shop for things brand new, I think that a lot of the time they're the same quality, you can find them thrifted, except the quality of it thrifted doesn't have as big of an impact, and that's the main thing, right? When you're thrifting. In this article, I think this is also worth mentioning, there is an overabundance of used clothes that nobody ever buys. And I think that that's telling us something about the fashion cycle in our modern world. That's probably one of the biggest things that I thought about when I was thrifting is, okay, there's so many clothes here. Look at how much we have. Look at the overabundance of clothes that we already have, and we keep on buying new things. It's like getting a new fridge every 5 years because your fridge breaks down. Except fashion is totally not like that. And I know that consumerism and materialism, especially in a capitalist structure like North America, I think we talk a lot about the fact that we can't afford things, or we can't, or like we have to buy new things every year. And the consumerist cycle has gotten shorter and shorter. So a lot of the time people will say, oh yeah, like I just bought a fridge and it won't last you 15 years anymore. It'll last you maybe 5 before you have to buy a new fridge. And I think that that mentality is the same for clothes. So the fact that we have an overabundance of clothes at thrift stores, I think is super sad. And I think that we need to really be thinking about the fact that why is this overabundance happening and how can we fix that? And one of the ways that we can fix that is by giving those clothes a home before we decide to give new clothes from fast fashion brands a home. Thrifting, especially for students, is a great alternative and a really sustainable alternative to shopping with fast fashion brands or getting things brand new. Because a lot of the time, even fast fashion brands are more expensive than thrifting. So like you can get the same tank top at Forever 21, for example. I don't even know if Forever 21 exists anymore. I know that it doesn't exist in Canada, so that's why I'm saying it. I know that if you get a tank top at Forever 21 that costs you $18 to $20, for example, if you get it on sale, maybe $10, the same tank top you can find at thrift stores. And I think the coolest thing about thrift stores is that I have found so many brand name items at thrift stores that I've gotten for like $5 instead of like $50. I found free people at thrift stores before, things that probably cost over $100 for literally $15. So that's my first thing. Thrifting. It's good. It's good for the environment and it's good for you. Also, I wanted to mention, even if you can't buy secondhand, like let's say that you don't have a store in your neighborhood or close to you at all that is a secondhand store, there's this really cool thing happening in the online fashion community right now, and that's shopping for secondhand online. And I've kind of already discussed this. If I can't find something or if I see something from a fast fashion brand that I really, really love and I feel like it would work really well in my wardrobe, I don't buy it unless I can find it secondhand. And that requires some waiting. So let's say, for example, I see something on Aritzia, and this has happened to me frequently. This happens to me all the time. Except I don't really love supporting Aritzia firsthand because it's a fast fashion brand. A lot of their materials don't come from ethically placed sources, and they steal a lot of their designs from other designers. So I just feel like it's unethical to buy directly from Aritzia. So instead, I will wait until the season is over. Aritzia has turnover every season, so they have their winter season, then they have their spring season, and then their summer season. So I'll wait, for example, if I see something in their winter season, I'll wait the 6-month period, and then after 6 months, I will go on Poshmark or Depop or Carousel. Those are all online mediated kind of vendors. So people that own these things that want to sell them now, that don't like them anymore, I buy them from secondhand sellers. And that's where I find a lot of things that I found fast fashion wise. And that's, I guess, my tip number 2, is finding things that you love from fast fashion sites and then waiting for turnover in the market and then waiting for somebody to sell that particular item. There's also more high-end luxury consignment stores out there where you can buy secondhand fashion too. This is where I find a lot of my brand name stuff for way less than it goes for regularly. And that's how I, as a student, afford brands like Reformation or really high-end expensive brands. I have things from brands like Missoni or Realization Par, things that I never thought I'd be able to afford, but I can afford now because I've gotten them secondhand off a luxury consignment store. The one luxury consignment store that I use pretty frequently is The Real Real, which I've talked about before, so I won't talk about it anymore. But it's a really, really great place to find designer things, especially if you're looking for like that perfect dress that you just can't get out of your brain. That's a really, really good place to start looking for things. And by buying secondhand, you're contributing sustainably to the economy, but you're also not breaking the bank, which I think is great. Another great way to shop sustainably is to minimalize your wardrobe. And this is something that I really need to focus on working on because I, as a consumer, do not minimalize my wardrobe. My wardrobe is massive. I have a lot of clothes and I love all the clothes that I have, but I think that if we think with a minimalist attitude, the way that we consume fashion would be so much better for the environment and it would be so much better for our pockets. I think that this is something that I'm going to try to incorporate more in my lifestyle, finding things that I love and throwing out things that I don't love. And that's something that I'm really happy I'm doing, and I think that I've been doing that recently more. I go through everything in my closet and I really think like, okay, do I need this anymore? Or can I give this away? Or can I contribute to the secondhand market by reselling it or donating it to somebody that needs it? Another thing that I read recently about shopping sustainably was to capsule your wardrobe. For a lot of people that think that they need a more simple wardrobe, I think that this is a really, really great tactic to shopping sustainably, and that is to capsule your wardrobe. So capsuling your wardrobe, I think, is a pretty common term now, and a lot of people on YouTube do like beautiful capsule wardrobe videos, and I totally recommend them. I'll pop some in the description so that you can see some capsule wardrobes that I've like fallen in love with, that I've tried. The less you buy, the more sustainable it is for the environment. So when you capsule your wardrobe, you have key pieces that you can wear a bunch of different ways, that you can use in a bunch of different contexts, and then therefore you have less clothes altogether, and therefore you're being sustainable and you're being ethical to the environment, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is something that is not possible for everybody to do, and that's to shop from sustainable brands. So there's this new trend kind of in the fashion community, and I think that it's great that a lot of people are talking about it and how to shop sustainably to begin with, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, so I've kind of jumped on the bandwagon. A lot of brands, new brands especially, are coming up with sustainable fashion. Sustainable fashion is always going to be more expensive because the way that it's sourced, the way that it's made, and who is making it is sustainable. And that's something that I feel like we don't think a lot about. When you buy from fast fashion brands, you are supporting sometimes child labor, you're sometimes supporting people that are making 50 cents on something that costs us $50. I think that sometimes we don't realize the impact that we have on the fashion market and what we support when we're buying from fast fashion brands. And this is something that I was pretty terrified to learn, and sometimes you can't avoid it. So for example, a couple of months ago I wanted Air Force Ones, and I realized that based on my new lifestyle I couldn't buy them because Nike, for the most part, even though they've been called out on it multiple times, still supports a lot of really unethical practices when they make their shoes. So I, as a consumer, said, okay, how can I participate in buying these sustainably? And the one way that I figured out how to do that was to buy the Nike secondhand. I feel like that's kind of counterproductive in the way that I did this, and I don't know if I should have done this, and sometimes it's really hard to shop sustainably because of this. Sometimes you see something really cute and there's just no way to make it sustainable. I love my Air Forces, I wear them constantly, but it's one of the things that I look at sometimes and I'm like, oh, like who suffered for these shoes to be on my feet? And I think that that's something that I think about a lot now, and if I was 6 months back and thinking about this, I might not have bought them just because of the way I think about them now. And sometimes it's just not possible, or you think it's not possible to shop sustainably. So anyway, I saw the Air Forces and I bought them secondhand off a seller on Poshmark who was just selling her Nike Air Forces because I think that they didn't fit her, like she bought them on sale and then they didn't fit her and she couldn't return them. So I bought them from this secondhand seller. So I technically bought brand new Air Forces secondhand, but at the same time, I'm still supporting Nike as a brand because I've bought these shoes now. And I think that that's something that's really scary to think about, especially when you think about sustainability a lot. I recently have been focusing on shopping sustainably from brands that I know are very transparent about their practices and how they're manufacturing their items. So I look for different things. One of them is fabrics. And I'll link the article that I got this from because there's certain fabrics that are better for the environment than others. And some brands really focus on putting that at the forefront of their messaging, and they say like, we use these fabrics because they're better for the environment, we manufacture all of our products here. There's really great things that you can look for, taglines kind of, that sustainable brands will use at the forefront of their messaging for consumers. So Reformation, for example, is probably one of the best examples of this. Reformation is a brand that is, I think, 100% at tier 1 sustainable, meaning that they work really, really hard to ensure that all of the things that are in their control they can make sustainable for their consumers. So that's a brand that I really support because they use sustainable fabrics, they pay their employees good wages, and they source their material from places that are ethical. I only buy from Reformation when they have sales, just because I'm a student and I can't afford to buy a $250 dress. It's just not in my budget. So I always wait for Reformation sales. Reformation has sales twice a year. I feel like they actually only have them once a year. I feel like they have a sale probably once a year, just around Christmas time, just before the 25th of December. It's probably like the 2 weeks before Christmas, and they do like 70% off. And at that point, I can figure out, okay, what things do I really want? What things did I really like from them this year? And I can buy them. But I think that that's something that not a lot of people can do. So you can buy from brands that support sustainability but are also not as expensive as Reformation. Los Angeles Apparel is a brand that I found pretty recently that I'm in love with now. I bought a bunch of stuff from them and I love them. They are a USA employee-owned brand that works out of Los Angeles. They are, I think, like a sister company to American Apparel. Everything that they make in their warehouses is made by employees that are happy, is made by employees that have benefits. Another really good thing to avoid is certain types of fabrics. There's a couple of fabrics that, according to this article, you should avoid. Things like polyester. Polyester is made from oil, so that's basically buying plastic in fabric. So if anything's made of polyester, chances are it's really, really bad for the environment. So avoid wearing polyester. Acrylic is even more toxic to produce, so anything that has acrylic in it, a lot of sweaters have acrylic in it, it's more toxic to produce than polyester. It uses a lot of pesticides. Anyway, there's a bunch of materials that you should avoid when you're shopping for clothes, if you're shopping for new clothes, that contribute to problems in our environment. There's also fabrics that you should look for. So things like Matinat. Matinat is a really, really great brand because they make vegan leather. One, it's vegan, which I think is really cool. But the inside of all of their bags, the lining of all of their bags is made from recycled water bottles. So if you ever see a brand like that that's saying like, we make this from recycled water bottles, or we reuse this material in order to make your pants, it's really, really cool because they're reusing things that already exist in the world that are problematic and turning them into things that are sustainable. A lot of stores now, or a lot of companies, will give you facts on how they are making their companies more sustainable. They'll tell you how much they pay their employees. Los Angeles Apparel is employee owned, which I think is amazing. Brands that are transparent about the way that they're producing your clothes that you're going to buy from them are good brands to look out for, because that means that one, they care, and two, they've thought about how to make their businesses more sustainable. So those are brands that I look for a lot. It's also, I think, a really good idea to do some research. I also think it's a really good idea to do some research yourself on what you can do to make your wardrobe more sustainable. And the more you read about child labor, or the more you read about unethical working conditions, or factories caving in on their employees and employees dying, or people that are making your garments dying because they're in not sustainable working conditions, those are things that you need to read about because it motivates everyone that reads them to shop more sustainably and to stop these things, these crimes of fast fashion from happening. Fast fashion is so awful for the environment in so many different ways. I mean, the CO2 emissions that the fashion industry alone emits per year is super problematic, and if you give any hoots about the environment, you'll care about where you're getting your clothes from. So that is why I care so much about sustainable fashion and how I shop sustainably. You should thrift more, you should buy secondhand as much as you can. Look for independent sellers on Depop or Poshmark that can sell you things that you love for less, and then you're not reproducing or reinforcing this non-reproduction in the fashion world. And don't buy new when you don't have to. There's a lot of things that you can buy secondhand that you never thought you'd be able to buy secondhand, but so much is out there, and I think that it's really important to educate yourself about how to shop as sustainably as you can. So thank you for listening to me talk about this for an hour. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm very passionate about the topic, so it's going to be long, but that's okay. It's fine. That's all of the ways that I have incorporated shopping sustainably into my budget, into my student lifestyle, and hopefully you can too. Thanks for watching.